Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Mill, a podcast hosted by Mill & Co. I'm your host, Rachel Ballatori, the founder and CEO, joined today by a good friend of mine who I've known now for a few years, Aizlyn Alfonso. Aizlyn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. For those who don't know Aizlyn, her pronouns are she, her, and hers. She started her career as an elementary school teacher after getting her master's degree in elementary education. After 2 years of teaching, she transitioned into her current role as a technical recruiter at Market Street Talent, where she has already found great success in just under 2 years. In her free time, she enjoys reading, singing, skiing and snowboarding, paddleboarding, and playing in a women's pool league. Very cool. She lives in Concord, New Hampshire, and is a new dog mom to her Dane Shepherd puppy, Zaylee. Aizlyn, thank you so much for being here with us.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, good to take a break from being a dog mom. I know I never take a break having 3 myself, so it's just a part of my personality at this point, I think.
Yeah. Actually, my trainer's been taking her. Yesterday, she took her from 10 to 5, and today she's taking her for a little bit. So that's a little bit helpful.
Isn't that great? You're like, I
Yeah.
love you so much. Please leave me alone. Okay, so let's dive into some questions. What is Market Street Talent?
So, Market Street Talent is a recruiting agency. We look at ourselves as a boutique style staffing agency. So, we're very small in size, but mighty. And our goal is to be the best staffing agency from the Seacoast, New Hampshire to the Boston area and beyond. So, we find talent for our clients all over the country, but a lot of them are in the New Hampshire and Massachusetts area, and they're in technology and digital marketing because that's our focus.
Yeah, and you led me right into my next question. So I don't know if you know this, Aizlyn, but my very first job out of college, I was a technical recruiter.
I did not.
At an IT recruiting firm. And then I moved into sales, and then I quit my job and moved home with my mom. And then here I am years later owning an agency. But this isn't about me. So just for those watching, Aizlyn, what is the difference between a technical recruiter and a recruiter?
So a technical recruiter is just because we focus in IT, we are a little bit more versed in all of the technologies in different kinds of IT roles, such as software engineers, data engineers, project managers, business analysts, things like that. A regular recruiter might recruit for medical or any other kind of sector, financial, things like that. So.
Yeah, cool. So why? Why are you a technical recruiter? What sparked your interest to get into this field?
So I was looking kind of at my financial situation mainly in my second year of teaching. I started teaching during the fall of the first year of COVID, so fall of 2020.
Mm,
So obviously those years were tough structure wise teaching, but also financially because the economy really started to take a turn. And so, commute wise and just financially living on my own and needing to afford things, I started to look into other careers, which I was a little bit sad about because
yeah.
teaching was my passion. But I joined a group where there were so many other teachers, like upwards of 20,000 people in this Facebook forum
Mm,
that were feeling the same kind of struggles. And a lot of them were talking about getting into tech, that we would be compensated fairly, we would have work life balance, and all of these things that we didn't necessarily have in teaching.
mm,
So I started looking into it, and I met somebody through that forum who had just landed a job as a technical recruiter about a month before I started talking to her.
mm.
Um, and I just kind of picked her brain about how she landed on technical recruiter and what other kinds of tech jobs she was looking at. Some teachers would go into learning and development, kind of designing trainings for corporate companies and things like that. But she landed on technical recruiting because she really liked working with people and building those relationships. And that was the strongest part for me of teaching and the thing that I was most passionate about. So I thought that that related. Looked into it a little bit more, connected with a bunch of people that were already technical recruiters on LinkedIn, other people that were transitioning from teaching to tech, and just kind of started to build my network. And then did some research about the job itself and what it entailed and how my skills were transferable and I could sell myself as a recruiter. without any experience in that field. So
Mm. It's interesting. There are so many parallels that I never really considered until 5 seconds ago when you said that, between teaching, which is working with people, helping them understand themselves, helping them understand where they want to go, and shaping their path to get to that future. And
yeah,
as someone who has experience for a few years as a technical recruiter, that's exactly what that is. You're working with people they're in this interesting transition time of their lives. Maybe they have some uncertainty. Maybe they're looking for things that you were looking for: more financial stability, freedom, structure, process. More opportunities for vertical growth. So I think that's so interesting, and it's also such a natural transition for you.
yeah, and keeping them engaged too, because all interview processes are different and take a different amount of time.
Mhm.
So I actually, I don't know if it's just coincidence, but there have been several people that I've hired that it's been kind of a long process, and I've kept them engaged, and they ended up choosing mine in the end and didn't get something along the way. And I think that was due to the relationship and just kind of keeping up with their activity and things like that. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. It's so you must meet hundreds, if not thousands of people a year, if not
yeah.
more. So, when you're evaluating a candidate, what are some things that you pay attention to the most?
So the biggest things that we pay attention to on our initial screening calls are actually communication, style. Obviously, people can be a little bit nervous in a first call, so we take that into account. We're not super sticklers on if they're stumbling over their words or they're really, you can tell it's a nervous kind of reaction. But just making sure that they're able to articulate their experience in a professional way and they talk positively about their past experiences rather than kind of bashing their previous employers or something like that, which would throw up a flag to us that maybe they would do that in an interview, which wouldn't be
Mhm,
good.
mhm,
Um, we look at how in depth they explain their experience. So if I've given them maybe a couple of technologies that this company is looking for, and they just kind of say, yes, I work with that technology. Okay, how do you work with that technology? And if they do that naturally on their own, I know that they know what they're talking about. It's
mhm,
really, I don't necessarily know the ins and outs of all of the technology, but I've learned to know when someone knows what they're talking about. So,
mhm.
if that makes sense.
It sure does. I think I go through the same thing when I'm evaluating contractors to pull into our team, new hires that I want to make. I take the same type of process. Is I don't really care much about all of your experience or frankly even your education, right? Like, where do you come from? Can you hold a conversation? Can you think critically? Are you a creative problem solver? Are you likable?
Right.
Like, are you relatable? To me, at least in marketing, those are some key things that I can't teach you that, I can
Yeah.
teach you marketing. I can teach you how to follow process for sure if you're coachable. Um,
Yeah, and it depends on the culture. I mean, we definitely take into account each of our clients' different cultures and what they're looking for. So sometimes they want someone with a super bubbly personality who can hold a conversation that way, and sometimes they want a typical what you would think of as an IT person that's straight
mm,
into the point and maybe not as conversational and fluff. So
yeah,
we take into account what they're looking for and what would be a fit with their team as well.
yeah, so smart. What are some things that you find, and maybe this is a recent development, are things that don't matter as much that maybe candidates think are really important?
I think I would say their like we just said their experience. It does matter, but kind of the way that they're able to articulate it and sell themselves. So just like I came from a teaching background and was able to talk about my transferable skills and get into a technical recruiting role without experience there.
Mm,
Um, kind of being able to talk about where you came from in a way that you believe that you can do it, and you have that faith in yourself, and then it kind of shows through in your experience and it'll just kind of naturally come together. I would say recently, it would be in this layoff culture that we've seen in the market in the past couple of years, probably. Um, the gaps, they used to matter a lot more. Now it's a little bit more lenient. Obviously, we don't want to see a huge gap on your resume, but with all of the layoffs and the competition in the market, if there's a little bit of a gap, we know that it's because the market's been pretty tough. So I think people used to be more worried about that and maybe are now, especially if you've been laid off and it wasn't under your control. But I
Mhm.
think people are a little bit more lenient on that, knowing the market. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. In fact, I remember very vividly my senior year of college at Johns Hopkins and being told, whatever you do, it's better to just have a job while you look for something else than to take a gap. And it sits with me because I'm like, what horrible advice to give to a 21-year-old who's like, I don't know what the I want to do with my life. And it's just, I remember being so defeated hearing that because it made me, the way I interpreted that feedback was, it doesn't matter if you're happy or not. You just can't have a gap in coverage on your resume. And what a horrific, pressure filled way to live, to be like, well, I just have to suck it up and live this way. And I think years ago, decades ago, that's the way it was. And so I agree with you. I'm happy to see that that is kind of shifting away. It's something that we don't care about at Mill & Co. We've interviewed folks who don't have a college degree. I don't have a master's degree, and yet I own a business. So I definitely am trying to take a much more progressive look at who are you as a person? What can you contribute to this team, to our culture, to our clients? Can you make everyone else around you better while you're making yourself better?
Yeah, I would say a degree too. Some of the clients specify that they would prefer a bachelor's degree, but most of the time it really is about the experience and the culture fit because people want to find someone that's going to last in their
Mm,
environment. So,
100%. Because you know what? I'm so happy that recruiters like you exist, but hiring is such a pain in the butt. So for employers like me, I don't want to have to go through this process multiple times. And then you invest in someone, bring them on, time and training, resources, effort, work slowing down, only for them to not be happy and leave, or for us to not be happy with them and have to make a change.
yeah.
So I'm so happy that people like you exist, Aizlyn, because it is awfully challenging as an employer when you're going through it.
Yeah, it is helpful. So, we like to kind of explain it that way, that we're just a resource that does all of this heavy work for you and puts the best people in front of you that fit with what you're looking for. We really get to know our clients and what they're looking
Mm.
for. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so now that you've been in this role for a few years, what would you say to someone that might be considering getting into this type of field in technical recruiting or recruiting in general?
I would probably say you need to be comfortable talking to people. So, cold calling, talking to people you haven't ever talked to before on a daily basis and multiple times a day. And that can be a little bit scary at first, but
Mm.
I kind of made that connection to talking to parents about children's performance in school. And so it wasn't that tough of a change for me. But I do have coworkers that are more introverted and they've gained a lot of more confidence by doing this. So you don't need to be necessarily an extrovert and be comfortable talking to strangers all the time. But if you're willing to be open to it, it could
Mm.
do a lot for yourself in your personal life as well. And I would say it's really interesting. My day to day in an agency setting, at least, is different all the time because we have different roles that come in. So one day I might be working on a data engineer, and then the next day I might be working on a project manager, and they're completely different. There's a lot of variety, makes the day go by faster. So I would say just build up your connection base on LinkedIn, connect with people that are in the role that you want to get into, and just kind of start talking to people and getting a feel for if this might be something that you want to get into. Also, I would say it's is kind of a salesy role, so there is an adjustment period. At least there was for me, of thinking about making commission versus base and
Mm.
um, kind of how that success looks when it's not always linear. And sometimes you're going to be really successful, and then there's going to be months where you're not as successful. So just kind of getting used to that and not beating yourself up about it. You have to be in that kind of mindset for this kind of role.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a whole nother side of it, especially if you don't have any sales experience to then get into it. And I think one of the harsh realities I learned very quickly as a recruiter is to not take rejection personally. Because I'm over here like, I'm super invested in your future. Like, I genuinely want you to be happy and healthy and make money. And I want my client to be happy that they've hired the right person. So when I would get a rejection, I remember so clearly being like, this is my fault. So, and I think that's just sales in general. Now I have such a thick skin. I mean, the amount of proposals and pitches that we put out that don't go through are a ton. But then for the ones that do come through, that carries you through it. So, I think my advice would be have a little bit of thick skin when it comes to getting things like rejection. And that comes with knowing you did everything you could. This is not a reflection of me. Sometimes things are just out of my control. And so that's what I mean by, having a little bit of a thicker skin isn't like allowing people to be rude to you, but protecting your own energy and knowing this is not a reflection of me.
Yeah. And sticking with it, because sometimes you have to try 13, 15 people before you find the right one. But that kind of is a good thing, because that means that they're vetting them enough that they believe that that person is going to be there for the long haul. So that's what you want in the long run. And if you have a few rejections up front, it's good to eventually land on that perfect fit. So
Totally agree. So you made a huge transition in terms of industry and job type. But with that came being fully remote. I'd love for you to walk us all through what that transition was like for you to go from in person, surrounded by colleagues, peers, students, to being fully remote, all digital. How did you adapt?
yeah, it was actually a little bit tough, honestly. I think most people would hear that and be super excited that they just get to work from home all the time.
Mhm.
I We did go into the office the first week that I was training, so that helped to build those relationships in person with my coworkers. But then once we switched to remote, I found myself making a lot of Teams calls to my coworkers throughout the day, maybe just kind of working in tandem with them on the other line. Like, it felt like there was someone there. It did take an adjustment period because I was used to getting interrupted 50 times a day by 6-year-olds. So I had like all of my focus and I wasn't getting interrupted. It was quiet. I structured my day the way that I needed to structure it.
Mhm.
And I think it was a good thing. I think I do well working remote, but it definitely was an adjustment period. And I have been called the glue of my company sometimes because I am constantly keeping in touch with people and keeping those internal relationships within my company.
Mhm.
So that's just kind of how I coped with it, was talking to people on a daily basis and checking in, even if it's just a quick check in and it doesn't take away from anyone's work or anything like that, but keeps those relationships up and makes it feel like more of a collaborative environment. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's amazing and pretty spot on. And I'm sure a lot of folks would resonate with that sentiment of what you just shared. I know for me, I've been remote since 2017, so 3 years before the pandemic hit. And I remember being in this 500 square foot walk up apartment in Manhattan, being like, so no one's watching me. No one's holding me accountable except me. I have deadlines, but no one's peering over my shoulder to get them done. And so I remember being so panicked. Like, every morning for me was like sheer panic. I would just get as much done as I possibly could. So then noon or 1 o'clock would hit and I'm like twiddling my thumbs because I was like, wow, I really buckled down and got so much done with no distractions. And then I'm
yeah,
sitting here like putting Family Guy on my TV because I'm like, well, what else am I going to do with my afternoon? When
yeah,
for employers and employees, I don't recommend doing that. Hint, hint. But it took me time to space out my work day. So I'm not killing myself in the morning, cramming everything in, probably rushing through it and making mistakes, but structuring it out. Okay, if my morning is dedicated to these projects, then my afternoon is going to be dedicated to this. And this is what I'm going to do today. And frankly, my calendar today is structured with the same structure I put into place in 2017 for myself, where I
mhm,
calendar block work that I need to get done, in addition to having meetings like recording this podcast with you. But that's what's helped me immensely, being in a fully remote environment. And I think the other piece of being remote that's challenging for sure, we have full-time employees, we have tons of contractors, and we have all of our clients, and we're all remote. There's some folks that we've never met in person in years. Years.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And so for us, our effort is how do we make sure that we are staying ever present, scheduling time for just old school phone calls, baby, Zoom, FaceTime if we have to, emailing, G-chatting, kind of hitting them on the various digital mediums to still have that kind of, in-person live experience.
Yeah, and a lot of companies have started going more towards hybrid and on-site,
Mm,
and I can see the benefit of that. Definitely, it's really nice when we can get on site and be together.
mm,
But I definitely am more productive at home when I don't have as many distractions. I know we just talked about the challenges, but there's the pros of it too, that I have more work-life balance. I don't have a commute. So when
mm,
my day starts, it starts. And when it's over, it's over. And I can just quickly move to the next thing. I can
yeah.
take my dog for a walk at lunchtime. I can raise a puppy. It is not easy working remote and raising a puppy, but it's possible. So
Yeah.
there are definitely pros and cons, but I think going from working fully on site to fully remote was
Mm.
definitely an adjustment period, but I've gotten used to it now and I'm in
Now
a
you're
schedule. So,
thriving with a puppy, living life. It's
yeah.
amazing. Don't get more than one. You can get two. Three's one too many. But
Mhm.
again, this is about you.
Yeah.
So I want to shift gears and I want to talk about something a bit more on the technical side. Obviously, AI is a huge part of the conversation for a lot of businesses. I certainly have my own opinions about how it plays a role into marketing and in particular what we do, which is strategic planning and strategic storytelling. But I'm curious, how have you seen AI impact the recruiting industry for better or for worse?
So we've gone, I guess, just a little bit of background into how we're keeping up with AI and things like that. We've gone to different networking events and we've even held some ourselves that
Mm,
the topic has centered around AI. So at one of them where it was pretty new, a little while ago, I heard the speaker say that either we can all learn to use this tool for good, or the bad people are going to be the only ones to learn to use it because we resist it, kind of. And
mm,
then it's going to take over in a bad way. So we're kind of that mindset at Market Street Talent. We want to keep up with it and use it to our advantage and keep up with our competition and things like that. So we're constantly learning about it, bringing in speakers to our own events that can speak to the legal side of things
mm,
and technical people that can speak to the technical side of things. And we've seen it impact recruiting, I would say, um, in a couple of different ways. So on the positive side of things, there are AI components being added into the softwares that we're using
mm,
to make things quicker and processes more efficient. So on LinkedIn, which we use the most frequently, I would say, in LinkedIn Recruiter, they have a component where will click on a candidate to message, and you can get an AI generated customized message for them right on the side there. I I'm not using it a lot myself yet, honestly, because I have a pretty good template going, but
mhm,
it's really helpful if you need a baseline. And
mm,
obviously, we're keeping it personalized and we're changing it so that it sounds like our own voice, but it's helpful to have that baseline.
yeah,
And then any kind of technical questions that we need to ask, we don't really need to go to a technical person anymore. We can really type it into Chat GPT and they can give us the answers to some of the technical things that are above our heads. And
mhm,
then we can just kind of cross reference that and make sure it's correct.
yeah,
So that's really helpful. And then I would say on the other side of things, where we've seen the most challenge with it is some clients use softwares that have also added AI components and might be more in depth scanning resumes and
mm,
kind of making sure that the resumes have these certain keywords. And if they're not on there enough, maybe our resumes get discounted. So it depends.
mm,
Obviously, when we've done all of this work to find the perfect fit and we've done a write up and we send it in front of the client, we would love for a human to look at that and read through it and see why we sent that person and how they're a fit, instead of just maybe an AI scan that
Mhm.
might miss some of the soft skill components that we're highlighting. Um, so that can be tricky. We haven't seen it too much, but I think it's started to peek through a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're aware of it and we're doing things like maybe putting those write ups in the resume so that those words are all in there, or
Mhm.
just kind of being strategic about how we put things forward that might make it through that AI scan. I know when I was transitioning from teaching, there were teachers in that group that would say, don't put your title as teaching, don't put educator, don't put those kind of keywords, because tech companies will scan your resume. And if they see those, some of them will be like, I don't want teachers. There's all these teachers transitioning in here. I
Mm.
want someone actually experienced in the field. And you could get kind of parsed out of an applicant tracking system that way.
Mm.
So that was always kind of there, but I think it's gotten a little bit more so because AI makes it a little bit easier to do that. So
Yeah.
hopefully it's not too negatively impacting, but we'll see.
Oh, I have so many thoughts about AI. What I've been sharing publicly and with my team is I think if you're not using it, you're behind. That said, I think that a lot of these AI tools, and we'll talk about Chat GPT specifically, it's the most well-known one, probably widely used. I think it's a tool for expediency, right? You need to research something, boom, quickly. I've used it to put together a job description and then tweaked it based on deeper prompts. Like, what an incredible tool that spit out in 5 seconds that probably would have taken me 30 minutes to 60 minutes to craft, right? Expediency. That said, that job description, in the case of this example, I had to read through it. I had to make edits. Some of it wasn't right. I had to go back in. There were no amount of prompts that would have gotten it to what I needed it to be. So again, I think it's a phenomenal tool that you need to be aware of how it's working and impacting your industry specifically. And in the sake of your clients, what irks me about that, Aizlyn, is there's so much about a person, a candidate, that's not on their resume. In fact, the first question I ask anyone I meet, whether they're a potential intern or a part-time person or a full-time person or a contractor, is tell me something about you that I can't read on your resume or find in your portfolio.
Mhm.
Because if they stutter and can't answer that question, that tells me a lot in that moment, right? Now, maybe they're nervous, of course, right? There's always going to be grace periods. But I don't want you to just regurgitate things at me like a robot,
Yeah.
like AI, right?
Yeah,
I'm
I
going
was
to use
gonna
a
say
person.
that when we first started using AI and Chat GPT in particular, I would notice that some of my coworkers would email me or send something that I was like, I know that's AI. Like I would call them out and I would be like, I know that was Chat GPT. It sounds like Chat GPT.
Mhm.
I know what your voice sounds like, even through email.
Mhm.
So I think that was helpful to just be honest, and they
Yeah.
would kind of look deeper into that. For me, myself, again, like I said in the beginning of this podcast, the relationship building is something that I'm really passionate about and is really important to
Mhm.
me. And I have always seen myself as a strong writer from like since I was a child. So,
Mhm.
um, for me, I typically tend to use my templates and craft emails on my own and write in my voice because I feel like it comes across more genuine.
Mhm.
But some people who don't feel that they're as strong of writers, ChatGPT is really helpful for them. So it's just kind of up to the person. I think I use it probably less than a lot of people because I want my voice to come across a certain way, and
Mhm.
I'm a little bit like type A about that. So,
We
but
are the same,
yeah.
my friend. We are the same in that regard. What's interesting too is that the more people that use AI tools and things like ChatGPT, I can go on LinkedIn right now and I can pinpoint the people using ChatGPT to write their LinkedIn posts
Yeah.
because it's the same structure, right? They've got these certain types of emojis, a certain type of intro paragraph, sub paragraph, bullet, 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 closure, call to action, hashtags. Everyone's doing the same thing on ChatGPT, and that's what it's spitting out. And so to me, now that we're trying to keep up with how smart AI is getting, I can pinpoint that, and immediately my brain, I'm like, well, but do you really want to share this? Do you believe in what's in here? How much time did you spend to think about it? And maybe that's a really old school way of thinking. And again, in my industry, I think there's a lot of ways that AI will impact marketing in terms of content creation. But where I sit with what we do in terms of brand strategy and really pulling out emotional elements through listening, talking, conversations, auditing, a lot of very manual work, I don't see it taking over that work for us. And I might eat those words in 10 years when I watch this podcast again and I'm out of a job. But for right now, I am digging my heels in and saying it's a tool. It's not the answer.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. So to wrap up, what can we expect from Market Street Talent in the coming 6 months, year, 5 years, anything in the pipeline?
Yeah, I would say Market Street Talent is just constantly growing. We have a really great client referral program that we recently started, that we're just kind of telling a lot of the people that even on the recruiting side that we talk to who might be hiring managers themselves, that if you know anyone that would be a potential client and you refer them to us, there's some lucrative benefits involved with that. So we've already had people paid out. We've already gotten a couple of new clients from that. So super exciting. And we love to branch out into these different industries. And just like I said, the variety of the job is really exciting. So having all of these new clients come on and different industries and things like that, is just super exciting and growing our business. So we just hope to continue growing, and placing a lot more people in their good fit jobs. So
Yeah. So for anyone watching this podcast, whether you are looking for a job, know someone who's looking for a job, work at a company that is hiring, or you own a company or in a hiring position at that company, please get in touch with Aizlyn. She will be tagged along with Market Street Talent in these posts and on our website. Aizlyn, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure to get to chat with you, and it's bringing me back to my first ever professional job. So thank you so much for being here.
of course, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
You're so welcome. Everyone, thank you again for tuning into The Mill. We'll see you next time.